this morning, I've actually got a bit of time to kill. I think there's a bit of microphone swapping going out the back. So I thought I'd pick up where His Holiness rudely interrupted earlier this morning when I was discussing some of the points that people often ask me about. They ask me, of all the people I've interviewed over the course of my 100 different experiences and experiments, what are some of the things that people are doing that are actually making life better? And I guess at some point in the journey, these kind of small things do make an incredible difference. And we just heard Dan Daly share his morning routine. You know, he spends 30 seconds thinking about what it is that he's grateful for. And that's something that comes up as a theme over and over again in the work that I come across. Gratitude journals, that seems to be something that a lot of successful people use. His Holiness mentioned that, you know, after he's meditated and, he spends some time considering the fact that he hands his body and his mind over to the service of others, and he actually takes that considered time each morning. So a morning routine is something I come across over and over again. Gratitude journals, it's incredible how many very sombre scientists and sort of theoretical types use a gratitude journal every morning, and I certainly use one now as well off the back of that. A lot of people also have this technique where they turn off their email and only open it twice a day. I reckon just about everybody in this room would benefit from that. Generally 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock is when people turn their emails on, and I try to operate to that principle, and when I do, I get a lot more done and I'm a lot more considered in my interactions on email. And I guess the final one that I come across over and over again is this notion of flow, finding ways to get flow into your life on a regular basis. And Michael earlier talked about shower thoughts. I generally find that they help. But walking is something that it's incredible how many people refer to it as a technique for their creativity and also for their happiness on a day-to-day level. If it's not walking, it's something with rhythm. A lot of knitters out there. There's a lot of very successful people who knit. And again, it's the rhythm. The rhythm can get us into this state where, for some reason, happiness and creativity is more conducive. So, we're at the pointy end of the day. And I think we need a little bit of inspiration. And to get us in touch with flow, our next panel is going to be discussing music. And the argument being that it's the heart and soul of happiness. So, our next quartet of panellists include Dr. Felicity Baker, Ben Pennings, Professor Julian Knowles and Deborah Conway. And they'll be joined by moderator Noel Mengel, who's the chief music writer on the Courier-Mail. Now, this is a man who definitely knows flow. He's been writing about Queensland music, but music broadly, for 20 years. And his first novel, RPM, won the Queensland Premier's Literary Award a few years back. He's currently writing another novel. Please welcome to the stage our 5 panellists.
Music makes me happy. I'll dance till the dawn. Music makes me.
Good afternoon. It's Friday. We're all happy, right? Where's our guitars? Yes, my name's Noel. I'd like to introduce you just very quickly Dr. Felicity Baker, who is an academic researcher into the therapeutic nature of music, among many other things. She's currently a research fellow for the Australian Research Council. Next to her, Ben Pennings, Community Development Coordinator, Reclink Australia, founder of Transformative Choir, who you're going to hear from. He's somebody who can tell us an awful lot about music as a high. Last time I saw you, you were on a great high. Professor Julian Knowles from the Queensland University of Technology, fabulously experienced musician and now very heavily involved in musical education at a tertiary level and music on a community level. And lastly, Deborah Conway. Hello, Deborah.
Hello, Noel.
Currently Artistic Director of the Queensland Music Festival, of course, a fabulously talented singer and songwriter, well known to all of you. I'm going to start by talking to Felicity because many of us here, the rest of us, I think, we know all about the unquantifiable joys of music and happiness and the things it brings. Felicity, you've been more connected with some things that are actually more quantifiable in your research, and you've seen some very objective observations about what music can do for people.
Yes, well, let me first tell you a little bit about what I do. I'm a music therapist by training, and so I've spent the last almost 20 years now, first in clinical work, working with people who have got brain injuries and using music to improve their health and well-being. And in the last last decade I've been moving into more of a area of research into this field. And quite frankly, I think I've got the best job in the world. I get to work with music every day and I get to help people. What more can you ask for? So in terms of the quantifiable things, we know quite a bit now about what kind of effects music has on our bodies and on our minds. And we've talked a lot these last 2 days about neuroplasticity and the involvement of the brain and how plastic it is. And one of the great pieces of research that's just come out of Finland just last year is this fantastic study which showed that patients who have had strokes and have damaged parts of their brain, just by actively listening to music, not doing anything else but actively listening, it changes their brain. And not only does it change it, but it improves their cognition and their ability to think. And they're not even doing anything, they're just actively listening to music. So just something as simple as that is a really powerful tool.
You've also seen music as creativity and how that's helped specific patients that you've worked with, including somebody you were telling me about before, a young girl who was battling depression after an accident. You saw a very positive result there.
Yeah. So one of my special interests is in the therapeutic value of songwriting. We all know that songs have the capacity to express a lot of emotion and they tell people stories. And as people tell their stories through music, they're able to process different aspects of the grief that they might be experiencing, as well as the joys. And so I was speaking with Noel over lunch about my work with this young girl. She was 16 and she had a brain injury and she was in a hospital for 18 months. So she was actually separated from her family for 18 months. And if any of you have ever worked with people who have significant brain injury, the rehabilitation is slow, it's arduous, it's tiring, and after a while, when you get knockback after knockback, it can really get people down. And so this particular girl was really wanting something to help her to be connected to her therapy, rather than sort of wallowing in the fact that she was so separated from her family, which she missed so much. So I worked with her and we created a song about her family as a way of helping her to stay connected to them when they weren't with her. And she wrote this song for her family and we played it to them, but then it became a symbol for her to keep her working hard. So the harder she worked, the sooner she could go home.
Beautiful. Ben, I've seen Transformers perform and you performed again today and you will be later, will be another treat for everybody. You've seen firsthand what music does for these people you're working with. Tell us a little about your work and with Transformers and the kind of highs you're experiencing.
Well, we get highs, lows, the whole lot, and I suppose music's a great way to express all sorts of emotion. And our aim isn't happiness, our aim is to come together and sing. And I suppose some of the research that we've done, and I will need to recognise Dr. Genevieve Dingle, who's been a lead research with some of the work we've been doing. And we're, many of you may not have heard of us, but you would have heard the Choir of Hard Knocks in Melbourne because there was a TV program, etc. And Reclink, who I work for, do choirs around the country. And when we set up here, our biggest demand was from the mental health sector by far, and also people experiencing homelessness, other disability as well. And yeah, people with serious mental illnesses, but a common thing of everyone just loves music and wanting to sing together. And our research and our experience has been that, we've got a wonderful music director, Yanni, who'll ask people at the start of the day, we have a check-in, are you a 1 to 2 today, or are you a 2 to 3, or are you a, people are feeling great are 9 to 10, and we see people improve throughout the day, and that's not because of the music, it's because they're singing with other people, and they're enjoying other people, and we're creating a family environment, an environment where people feel safe to test their boundaries. And we have people with, pretty extreme anxiety disorders who, today perform for the Dalai Lama, going to be in front of 2,000 people here, and that's been a process of 2.5 years leading up. And, we're on a high today because we performed for the Dalai Lama at his lunch, but we have, we see the lows as well, and it's about supporting people, through all different stages of their life and their experience that develops the trust that we can work together and sing together well. And we love it. It's hard to explain unless you see us, and where a lot of the speakers have been talking about altruism in the conference that I've seen so far, and giving, and I suppose that's something which we try and do, and our music director really emphasises, is that what we have is a gift to other people. So we love to see the audience. I'm glad we can see some of you guys here, and yeah, we love to see who we're singing to, and to give the gift of music, and not just the gift of music. We're not the Tabernacle Choir. We're not going to be superstars, but what we can give is energy and love, and show the happiness and the enjoyment about the opportunity we've been given.
Beautiful. We'll talk some more about this. An aspect I've been thinking about lately, and possibly a problem related to happiness in our society, is a breakdown in communities. The old kind of communities that once existed when people lived in villages with high streets and had churches and other forms of communication, many of which are breaking down. Music is a form of community, and it's a way of, hey, I'm at a gig and I'm with my people. These are other people like me. This is something both Julian and Deborah have been thinking about in their roles lately. I'll also talk about creativity later, but maybe, Julian, can I just throw to you about some of your work and working with tertiary students, but also these other projects which you're involved in. One recent one, an incredibly detailed, a massive undertaking called the 100 Songs Project, which you just took part in with some fabulously talented people. Let's tell us a bit about that.
Well, mate, I should maybe start with 100 Songs, which was this, as Noel says, this quite large and outrageous project in which we called for people to apply to be part of an event where we recorded 100 songs in 100 hours. And it was really quite a moving event in many ways, because rarely do you ever get to see such an outpouring of musical expression in such a concentrated period from such a wide group of musicians. So what that really kind of illuminates is this sense that the song or music is this really central point of self-expression for so many people. It allows them to communicate quite deeply thought and felt experiences to other people, and create quite intimate transactions with the listeners. Bringing 100 songwriters into that space, we recorded across, we had a recording studio complex, we had 3 studios going. Each artist had a very small amount of time to record their song. We had a team of recording engineers and producers where we created a mix of that song in the 3 or 4 hours time, and then we were broadcasting those songs with radio partners throughout the week. So it was what it really illuminated for me was this kind of central way in which music is a kind of a platform for so many people in which they can express these deeply thought emotions. Thinking about it from your own experience, that age of, particularly in your teenage years through your early 20s, where music sort of becomes the most important thing in many people's lives. I mean, I think even people who aren't professional musicians, who are just average people that just do other things, but this idea that music somehow connects you to your zeitgeist, the spirit of your time. There's a way in which you feel part of something by the music that surrounds you, and there's music that connects to you. That's something very much that I've experienced personally, but something that when you start to mentor other musicians and you teach younger musicians now, you very much see them feel part of their own zeitgeist, their own time, and their generation has something to say about the world. So that's, certainly over the 16 years I've spent teaching in universities, you notice that with each sort of wave of people that comes through, there are kind of things they're thinking about, and there is a way that they're tapping into their generation and what they have to say.
Beautiful.
You keep talking, because I'm just going to get some water as well.
Okay.
Get me one.
But I can listen and pour.
Deborah, for the last few years, has been the artistic director of the Queensland Music Festival, and I want you to tell us a bit about that. It's an amazing event, apart from being the most geographically diverse musical event probably anywhere in the world. But a lot of it is about connecting with these far-flung communities and bringing a sense of joy to some of these communities. So could you tell us a bit of that?
Well, I first of all have to dispute Felicity's comment about her job being the best in the world, because I reckon mine is.
Mine is.
Because I'm the artistic director of the Queensland Music Festival, and the Queensland Music Festival is quite unique because it goes into communities all over Queensland. It's a biennial festival, so we do it once every 2 years. and we stage large-scale musical events with community involvement. So we go in there and we find out what makes people heartbeat a little bit quicker and what's really important to them. And then we go about telling those stories in a musical way, in the best possible way that we know how, and bringing in excellence from around the state, from around the country, and sometimes even from around the world. And to do that and to see the results from bringing communities together in these very large-scale events is just to see so much incredible positive energy coalesce around these ideas, and to see communities come together in ways that they sort of haven't before, you know, so that the local motocross club kind of starts talking to the healthy ageing in place women, and the school kids, you know, form the School of the Air string orchestra, and they all come together on stage, and you know, there's just so many kind of ramifications, and you don't have to be a musician to make music. I think you don't have to be a sportsman to play sport, and you don't have to be a musician to play music. It is open to everybody, and that is the beauty of these things. And to see choirs forming and to hear people singing and singing their hearts out and connecting with all of these other people that they wouldn't normally connect with in such an emotional way has such a powerful effect on their own psyche, and also on the people listening to them as well. It's great, you know. Yeah, these things are going on all over the place, and pick up a program somewhere, or qmf.org.au if you're in touch with the internet. Now that's enough for selling. So
another aspect I wanted to talk about is creativity and happiness. I mean, many of these conversations come back to the use of the imagination. A thing I think of when I've always played in bands. I'm not happy when I'm not doing it, and I'm happier when I am doing it. But I realise there is a momentum in life. There's things to do. You're busy. I guess that's all part of the therapy too. It adding a new focus to people's lives. That kind of momentum must be part of what you're doing with people.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we need to be creative to be healthy.
Yes.
Creativity is what solves world's solutions, you know, world problems. We need to be creative. And not only do we need to be creative in the things we do with the world, but with ourselves as well. And I think in the work that I've done with the songwriting with different people, it's all about them using their creativity as a way of connecting with themselves, and then being able to share that with other people. And you know, we talked a little bit about the power of a group, and I think that creativity in a group is within a therapeutic process is really important as well. That, for example, in working with people who've got substance use disorder, you can have them in a group, and they can be talking about the things that are going on for them, and problem solving and generating creative solutions, and then they put that into the music, and then they have a shared sense of their way of dealing with issues, and they become a bit of a support system for one another through music.
Yes. Ben, let's talk a bit more about your work with the disadvantaged in general, and getting out into the streets, prisons, other places, this bond that music seems to have with everyone.
Yeah, it is a bond and brings people together, and there is the power in the group. And I think music bringing people together is great, and people who experience disadvantage are often tended to be grouped together, as in, you know, people who are homeless, people who have an intellectual disability, people who have a psychiatric disability, Indigenous people, etc., etc. And although we're all experiencing disadvantage, we also have volunteers in the group who sing who don't experience disadvantage, but it's everyone there is with a common love, which is music. And we emphasise that no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, the challenges you've had in your life with regards to your family, your health status, etc., etc., you can and are creative. And it's important what Deborah was saying before is that, you know, we're not all musicians, but we can all be part of music. And I've really enjoyed it as someone who hasn't really sung since church. Being involved with this group has been a wonderful experience. And we've got it's not only with regards to music, it's songwriting and be able to express. And, you we've got a song which is called To Be Heard, and a lot of people who are live on the margins, who've experienced disadvantage through personal circumstances or through structural discrimination or whatever it may be, haven't been heard, in their families, in their communities, ignored by the much of the media and wider society. So it's really important that they have a voice. And the guy who wrote the song To Be Heard is a guy called Brian Brokopis, who's a long-time lifeline worker, great musician, community worker, sort of legend in his own lifetime. And he's our master songwriter, and he encourages people along, as in, don't give him a topic and go and write a song. He'll sit with a group of people at lunchtime and say, what do you think about this? And get a few words together, put a few phrases together, do a little workshop, bring some things back, and often it comes out with the most extraordinary song. Sometimes we have songs that, are challenging with the people with regards to who we're dealing with. They can have, triggers in their lives. There's been a couple of songs, like even like a Burt Bacharach song, we started to sing and we had to stop singing because it triggered a couple of people with regards to some of their personal experiences. So we've got a lot of factors that we need to be careful of, and we have a number of rules and processes that really keep us safe, which is a really important thing. Is that all the people in our choir are there for a reason, is that they want to sing but they can't access mainstream choirs because of poverty or because of behavioural stuff, past experiences, etc. And they're welcome, and the big rule is once a transformer, always a transformer. And I'm soon going to be an ex-transformer, moving on in a month or so after doing a Queensland Music Festival gig with Deborah. And I'm looking forward to the day where I can come back and be in the audience like you guys and experience the wonder they produce.
I want to talk to the two songwriters over here about creativity. We're going to run out of time to talk about it. Deborah, you've been a professional musician for most of your adult life.
Semi-professionally.
As a reason for that, it's because you're great at it. We all know a lot of musicians, some of them can be damaged souls, and that's part of what they do.
I was just thinking about how many very prominent musicians have died young. And, in Finland they drink themselves to death, I hear, at a ridiculous rate. But, sorry.
But rarely, the angst, the personal dramas, the things they're writing about, that can be what drives people to write a song. But I never hear from people who are unhappy when they're actually having written a song or are performing it. And that's, again, partly to do with using all your faculties and imagination to the max, I guess. But that's where the real joy comes from, isn't it?
Well, of course, there's a huge joy in the creation of something. If you've actually managed to create something, then it is the most wonderful feeling. But in the process to creating something, you can feel very, very bad. You can, want to throw yourself against a wall or something because it can be very frustrating. But if you can work through all of that, then yes, you can get to the other side and you do feel elated. But I think the thing about creating music and playing music is that it's also very physical. And when we're doing physical things, and the more that we do them, and we kind of drive out the bad stuff because we haven't got enough time to dwell on it. We have to just concentrate, we have to focus. And in the process of doing those things, you are happy. I mean, I always feel that happiness is kind of fleeting anyway, but that's what's so lovely about it, that you can just go, oh, I'm so happy right now, this very moment, and I'm having a perfect moment. And then it passes, but that's okay, and there'll be another one. But there is a lot of anxiety in being a musician, but maybe that's what draws people to pursue being a professional musician, because they're anxious people, and because in the process of making music, of performing it, of actually writing that gem of a song that you're so happy with, at least for 24 hours, you're happy.
Also in performance too, just something people might know. People might be unhappy, but I don't think anybody's unhappy singing along with their favourite song while they're doing the dishes. And at that same level, no matter what angst a band goes through and traumas all day on the road fighting with each other, and after they get off backstage fighting with each other, they're not getting on, that hour of performance when they're focused, no one's unhappy there.
Lately I keep bumping into people who've got their headphones on and they're singing really loudly and really badly. And they look so happy while they're doing it. They just, walk into a tunnel and they kind of love the sound of their own voice. It's good.
So, yeah, I mean, there's something about, just going on from what Deborah was saying, us musicians tend to be people who, we experience things quite intensely. I think in order for people to make music, there has to be a sense in which you do feel or experience things quite deeply. You are working, you're trading in a level of, it's an emotional currency of sorts. I mean, the capacity to be able to take to the stage, perform music, and have an effect on people. I mean, that's a really quite a powerful thing you're dealing with. To be able to move people to tears. To move people to tears through music, you have to understand where tears come from. So I think there's a sense in which, and many of the great musicians I've known, the thing that really does seem to bind a lot of people is that they are quite sensitive souls in some ways. I mean, some people deal with that sensitivity very effectively and are quite resilient. Other people don't deal with that sensitivity very well and are actually very on the edge a lot, and they end up going off the rails and not coping with that sensitivity. So, and the whole process of being a musician and taking to the stage, like an event like this, you have to take to the stage and you have to make yourself vulnerable in front of other people. And you're making yourself vulnerable in front of other people for a living. So there's got to be something about that whole process of laying yourself and making yourself vulnerable to your audience. That's part of the business of trading in emotions and being a musician.
I'm going to wrap up now because we've been talking about music a lot. Let's hear some music. Ben, you want to just tell us a little bit more about Transformers and what you've been working on at the moment?
Yeah, well, I think I meant to give you the Transformers spiel when you guys are walking off, so they can come in and we can move the chairs.
Oh, right.
And I do want to mention, though, before we finish, is we're talking about altruism and giving. So I've been hanging around the conference for a couple of days and been involved with logistics with the choir and the Dalai Lama and all that sort of stuff. And I wanted to thank publicly all the extraordinary volunteers and staff around who've been doing a wonderful job. It's, just out the back there I ran into a friend of my mother-in-law's.
Yeah.
Who said, "You're Ben, aren't you? I've heard good things about you." And I was like, "Oh."
I think we all agree music gives us just some of the greatest experiences of our lives. I'm sure you might agree, but I know us five agree. Thank you, Deborah, Julian, Ben, Felicity. It's been great fun.
Thank you, Noel.
Thank you, Noel.
Thank you.